Hello everyone and welcome to the Securing DevOps Show and Tell episode 2. My name is Julien Véran and I will be your host as we talk to April King this week about her project, the Mozilla Laboratory, a Firefox extension that helps you set content security policy on your website. April is a web security engineer here at Mozilla, a colleague of mine. She's been around the internet for quite some time working on improving web security for everyone. You might know her from her work on observatory.mozilla.org, a site that scans and helps you detect issues with your websites. She's done a ton of work on scanning the internet to identify the common security issues and write guidance to help developers fix them. You might also have seen her work on bad SSL and setting up example sites that set, bad SSL. So April, as always, gives awesome demos, and she walks us through how to set and configure and improve content security policy using Mozilla Laboratory. Here we go.
So I have a blank Firefox profile here, so we're going to go to addons.mozilla.org, and we're going to search for, see if I can remember it right. Hey, look at that, laboratory. Boop. All right, so laboratory is by basically just me. I've done all the development on it. We're going to install it. It's going to say, yep, it wants to see all of your stuff and for everything, and we're going to click add. All right, so now Laboratory doesn't work on addons.mozilla.org like a lot of extensions because it's blocked. So if you go here, you'll see that, well, you can monitor addons.mozilla.org. So what does Laboratory do? Well, one of the best things you can do to improve the security of your website, especially if you have any kind of user-controlled content, blog posts, forum, or like profiles, any get parameters that they can manipulate, is to get CSP working on your website. And CSP is basically just a list of, it's like a white list of where things are allowed to load from, any resource that you might want. So it can say like JavaScript can load from this website, and images can load from this website, and we can make connect, we can do XHR requests to this specific connect endpoint, and so on and so forth. But this is really, really hard to do because most people don't know everything that their site does. It's like really, really hard. Like you build your site, maybe you include a library here, a library there, you install some images, maybe you embed YouTube, and all of a sudden you end up with a ton of things being loaded that you don't even know that you're doing. And this is actually a big blocker for a lot of people because historically the only way you've been able to figure out what your site does is to install some sort of like proxying, forward proxying thing like Zap or what can I think of the other one? Burp, Zap or Burp, and you monitor all the requests that are going outgoing because it's one of the best ways to do it. And then you're just like, all right, well, here's the thing. Now I'll add it to the CSP, and then we'll reload the page and see if things works. And this is just a huge hassle. It just really, really sucks. Well, Laboratory
will show most of the things too, right?
Yeah, you can see it in DevTools. That works a lot too. But one of the limitations of DevTools is that you have to have access to your web server if you're going to be testing CSP that way. So, if you want to test CSP doing, using DevTools, you'll look at your DevTools and you'll take a URL and you'll copy and paste it into your web server configuration and reload your web server and see if it works. Well, if you don't have access to, or it's really difficult to reload your website on the fly like that, which it is for a lot of people, that's kind of a problem. So the reason why a lot of people use things like Zap and Burp is that they can not only monitor the requests, but they can inject that CSP header for you. So you can inject it with Zap and like reload your page, look in the DevTools, see what doesn't load, then change your your Zap configuration to inject some more stuff into your CSP, and go back and forth until it kind of works. But these tools, Burp is expensive for a lot of people. Both Zap and Burp are like pretty complicated for people to use. It's not a terribly optimal solution, which is why only really big websites, people with lots of engineers have really done CSP in the past.
And it's
So
not very realistic to ask like everyday web devs to install Zap and be entirely familiar with Zap. Like some
yeah,
of them invest the time, but that's not the usual.
absolutely. It's like pretty unfair to expect somebody who's not a security professional to kind of figure out CSP. It's just really, really, really hard. It's something that even people who do web security struggle with, and they specialize in this thing. So the idea with Laboratory is that it takes all of this work out of the equation for you. So how it works is it injects, well, let's just go to a website. So we'll go to my homepage. This is poking the IO. I've got some blog posts here, whatnot. And I want to get CSP going on my blog. Now, let's take a look over here and see how it's doing right now. We'll scan it. And this is a little awkward because it's all zoomed in. But you can see here that we don't have a content security policy. So we're getting minus 25 points. That's not great. We want to get this working. Now,
It's the airport tax for your website.
yes, exactly.
You're not getting anywhere more than a B.
Yeah, this is so observatory is for like telling people you got to do this. You can't get better than a B without CSP. It even links you to a laboratory to make it easier for you. Now, let's kind of look like what it would be like in the past. So let's bring up the DevTools, and we'll go over to this network tab, and let's just start with say JavaScript, and we'll refresh this page. All right. So we can see now it's loading 4 pieces of JavaScript. So we'll log into my web server. I really hope this works. Hey, look at that. Is that legible? Do you need me to zoom in at all?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Okay. So we're gonna go to Nginx conf.d, and we're gonna open up the Nginx configuration for my website. And we're gonna go down to right here. So this is where I inject headers into the page. So right now I've done every header possible except for CSP for like regular HTML pages, what the observatory is scanning. So let's start off by saying, let's see, all right, so add header, content, security, policy. All right, so we're going to start with default source none, which basically says block everything that this website is trying to do. And you can see what that's going to look like. Let's do this here. There we go. And I think I need always. All right.
I like how you know both the CSP and the Nginx config, like syntax by heart.
Yeah, I've done this a lot, like a lot. So we're gonna reload Nginx, and we'll refresh the page. Oh, now it's sending a CSP, saying nothing gets loaded. All right, well, okay, well that's great. That's super handy. If you go over to the console, you'll see.
Looks
whoa,
good to me.
Look at all this stuff. Yeah, this is like the internet, the World Wide Web in like 1993. It was awesome.
Yeah.
So, let's just start with an image. So we're going to say you can see here that it's blocking the loading of images from poking the IO, which is just myself. So we're going to go back here, boop, and we're going to change this to default source none, image source self. And this says, you can load images, from your own, the own web server that it is. So we'll reload Nginx. We'll give it a refresh. Hey, fewer things are blocked. All right, well, this is great. This is cool. Now we're just blocking, looks like we've got JavaScript files. We got some CSP blocked. So let's maybe say, well, let's add fonts.googleapis.com to the list. So we'll go back over here, and we'll do, let's see, style, source, and then boop. So this is going to be the Google Fonts API endpoint. So we'll do that and reload it. And then we'll just reload the page. All right, well, now we're making some progress here. So we loaded that CSS file from Google, but now it's trying to load the fonts, and it can't load this. So this, as you can tell, this is like a really tedious process. This really sucks. And I know what I'm doing. And this is a simple website. And like this is awful. And I have access to reload the web server as many times as I want. Well, I don't want to do it this way. So I'm going to show you how hard this process, how difficult this process is if you use Laboratory. So let's go back here. And we'll just clear this out.
And by the way, this process is exactly why every time I mention CSP in a meeting, the engineers go silent.
Yep. It's just terrible. It's just terrible. So
just their face goes blank like this. They don't want to do it. Like,
I don't want to do it.
Look at this. Like,
it's so hard. It's really, really hard. This, when I built my website, I was like, I'm going to build a site that's entirely static content. It's built from templates, and I write a post, and then it updates all the templates, and then it's done. And even I was like, oh my God, this is so miserable to add CSP to my website. It's what I do for a living. I get paid good money to just do this nonsense. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to go into Laboratory. This is what it looks like. So it has a few different things that you can do. So you can say, record this website, enforce CSP policy, which basically says it's going to enforce the CSP that it's already recorded. Right now, we don't have anything recorded yet. And then the last is like, a custom CSP policy. So for example, if I click this, I could do, say, default source. Let's do none. And then we'll do image source self. And we'll click Save the Policy. And then we'll just refresh the page. Bloop. All right. So now we're back to where we were before. So it's ignoring whatever CSP policy the website is sending. And it is recording in real time. Well, in this case right now, it's just injecting the header. So you can see right away. If you make changes, now I could just go back in here. I could edit this. I could do, say, style source, what was it, HTTPS, fonts.googleapis.com/CSS. Bloop. Go back here and refresh. Oops, did I do that wrong? Click here. Oh, sorry, I put quotation marks around it. There's no quotation marks here. Go over here, save the policy. So this lets me know immediately that I made a mistake. So I'll go back, we'll refresh, and now you can see here. So we could do, say, font source, and we can say, well, we're going to add this here. Go back in here, we can edit. Font source, and then put this one in here. Save the policy, refresh the page, and you can see we're continuing to make progress. Things are, improving. So now we've loaded that style sheet, we've loaded those fonts, and that's great. But this is still that same process you had before. But it's nicer because you don't need to actually affect the website itself. So, if if I were to say let me turn this off real quick. And we'll go back in here, and we'll just comment this out. So now we have no CSP header. We're going to reload. We'll see. All right, the site works great, just exactly as it's supposed to work. But I can do this here, custom CSP policy. There it comes back. Refresh the page. Oh, there it is. But the actual site itself is not affected. It's just continuing to run as you would normally expect. You're testing your CSP in real time here without affecting it at all. You don't need any extra software besides just the web extension. You just type things in. So this is really, really great. Let me take a quick drink of water.
So under the hood, the extension is messing with the injecting into the rendering that the browser is doing, just adding or is it just adding the CSP header in the web request before the browser processes it?
Yeah, so what's happening here when you're having a custom CSP policy or enforcing a CSP policy, what Laboratory is doing is it's stripping the website's content security policy, if it has one, and it's just monitoring the incoming headers that come from the web server, and it's just injecting this content security policy header in there. And that's how it works. So this is really cool. This is handy. But this is not the real strength of Laboratory. Like, this is great for a lot of people. This does what a lot of people need, and it does it with a minimal amount of fuss. It's just super quick, super easy. We'll just delete all our settings here. Here's the real meat and potatoes. So let's just make sure. All right, website's working great. We're going to choose this option called Record This Site. And here's what Laboratory does behind the scenes when you do this. So first, it strips out the website's existing content security policy. Just removes it altogether. If it has one, it's gone. And then what it does is it injects a special header called Content Security Policy Report Only. So what this header is supposed to do is it lets you test out your content security policy in, say, production. And it will upload any errors that people run into, but the browser doesn't actually enforce it. So the browser lets you track what errors would have happened if CSP were there. And Laboratory is going to abuse that. What it's going to do is it's going to say, you know, default source none, image source none, script source none, et cetera, for a content security policy report only. And then it's going to create a fake reporting endpoint. So it's going to just listen on that reporting endpoint, and it's going to ingest CSP. It's going to ingest those CSP headers. So this is how it knows what resources your browser tried to load. And this is important because, you know, some things you could just get by, for example, just monitoring all your network requests, like images and fonts and JavaScript files. Those are all easy to see. With just simply monitoring the network requests. But some things, like inline JavaScript, don't create a network request, but they would still generate a policy error. So by doing this, by ingesting these CSP errors, it's able to catch everything that would have happened. So we're going to click Record this site. All right, so now it's recording one site. And we'll just refresh the page. And you'll see here a whole bunch of warnings in your console. Now, you know, it says here, you know, I think it used to say it, but like, because it's injecting that header, you're seeing all of these reports also show up in your console. But it's not affecting how the site actually functions. So let's pop up Laboratory again. Boop. All right. Well, this is cool. We can see already that it's caught all of these different resources that you've requested, and it's built a really nice looking CSP for you. So you can see it starts out with default source none, which is the safest way to do it. And we got a font source here, and we got image source and script source and style source. Now, one of the really cool things about Laboratory is that it lets you drill down to be as specific as you want per CSP directive. So let's say you're loading images from, you know, imager.com. You're not going to want to list every single possible image that you could load. You're going to want to say, just load images from the server. And you can do that with Laboratory. So let's look at this here. And you can see, you know, we're loading scripts from the Cloudflare CDN, the Mac CDN, and the jQuery CDN. And it's doing this because this is really fast. These files might already be in people's browser cache. Now, what if I thought to myself, well, this is specific all the way down to the exact file that was used. What if I don't care about this? Now, for scripts, I think usually, if you can, you want to go down to the exact file used. But you could adjust it. You could say script source. Let's just have it be the directory those scripts are in. Now you go back up here.
In some cases, yeah, a company may have their own CDN, for example, where they put all their stuff in it. You don't want to list every single file. You could just say that CDN is whitelisted, right?
Yep, and or you could say, like, this directory on the CDN is whitelisted. So if there's 1,000 JavaScript files in there and it's using all of them, now you're just whitelisting, you know, that specific directory. And you can make it looser if you want. So you could do, you know, script source is just the origin. So that's just the web server. Or you could do script sources. So what this is these are basically the same. Directory and path are basically the same as directory and path here, except for one difference, and that is that if it loads something from itself, instead of just saying the self directive, it will also list out the full path. So now if we go here, you'll see that I can't show you because if I move my mouse, it's going to go off here. But you'll see that it's loading the final JavaScript file is a specific path to a JavaScript file on my server. So that's there if you want it. Now, I'm just going to go back to the defaults here. The defaults are basically all chosen to be like pretty sane. So, you know, fonts says, you know, you can load a font from anywhere on that server by default, images anywhere on that server, and so on. Scripts are all the way down to a specific thing. Style sheets are down to a directory. But you can adjust this to be as specific, my apologies, as specific or as loose as you want. Now, I do
And you can
also.
also go, like, at this stage, you can go in the custom policy and edit it by hand if you want, right?
Yep, absolutely. Yep, you could copy this and make it a custom policy and edit it if you want. And actually, so I also know that this, I at one point did a little thing that was on YouTube. So let's go over here, and I said, you know, with Laboratory, all you have to do to generate this policy is you just click around in your website. You go here, that was cool, I'll go here, and it's just listening to everything that you're doing on this website. Now I did this one here. This one's got a, yep, I don't care. So it's got a little video. We'll start it and stop it. All right, so now let's go back here. Boop. All right, cool. Well, now we can see that we caught another thing that it did. So you can see here that it loaded a child frame that was on YouTube.com because it saw that I loaded a YouTube video, and now all of a sudden it's generating that content security policy. So we've browsed around a little bit. Now let's just click.
So
Go ahead.
So I see here. So in this particular case, it put the frame SRC to youtube.com and not the specific, like the actual address of the video. Can you actually tell it that, yeah, you're allowed to frame like this resource on youtube.com and not all of youtube.com?
Absolutely. So if I change frame source to be self-same origin, otherwise path, we can see now you're allowing the embed for that one specific video, which is pretty cool.
Awesome.
And you could also just say, like, you know, I can do it with the directory, and now you'll see that it's just you're allowing all embedded videos from YouTube, but nothing else that's framed. So you can't frame like the YouTube homepage or anything like that. So
it's pretty sensible, yeah.
Yeah, I think so. So let's just set this back. We'll go back to the defaults. All right. So now we've generated a content security policy. Let's clear this out here. All right. So now we're going to go back in here, and we're going to choose to enforce this content security policy. So now it's enforced what is down here below, like what it's recorded. Now this is a very safe policy. There's no, it didn't see any inline JavaScript or anything like that. So I'm going to go back here, and we're just going to refresh the page. Hey, this looks good. There's no CSP errors. Well, you know, it's injecting the CSP header, but nothing got blocked, even though you have like this pretty specific policy right here. So, all right, well, this seems good. This seems good. So let's just copy it. We'll go back over here, and we'll just uncomment this, and we'll go over here. Do. All right, let's paste that in. Now let's. Oh, I think I put a space at the beginning here. There we go. And let's save it and reload. All right, now let's just turn Laboratory off. So now it's not doing anything. It still keeps track of what it saw, unless you choose to delete all your settings. But we're just going to refresh the page. This looks great. We got no CSP errors at all. If we go over to the network thing here, we'll just do a refresh here. Boop. Oh, I'm just looking at JavaScript. There we go. You'll see here that it did in fact send a content security policy header. And if we go over to Observatory and choose to rescan, see, there we go. We've got a very strong security policy. So implemented with default source none, no unsafe directives. All I had to do was just click around, start recording, click around on a bunch of pages, and then copy and paste it into my web server configuration. That's all you had to do.
Well, of course, you're cheating a little because you don't have any inline scripts, any inline CSS. Like, would Laboratory actually generate the nonces for those, or it would just tell you that it needs to put unsafe inline? Or
right now, it does not generate any nonces. Part of the difficulty is that a lot of websites that have inline code, that code tends to change on every single page load. Sometimes it doesn't, but on a lot of pages it does, and that could generate a super long CSP, which might be fine. One of the problems, one of the limitations that the Laboratory has is that it's only seeing the error report from, you know, that was generated by injecting, you know, the block everything header. And the problem with that is that those reports, they will tell you, you know, what page that the report came from and what line that piece of code is from, but it won't give you like the hash sum of it or anything. So you can try to, you know, inject into the
Yeah.
page and try to find that piece of inline script, and hopefully it's still there. So hopefully that tab is still active, and try to pull it out and generate the hash and everything.
Yeah, but at that point, you're probably better off telling the devs, hey, you have inline code. You should probably move it to a separate file and try again, rather than, yeah, like you said, trying to do the black magic of figuring out the hash, and then it might change on every page, or at least on every release, and etc. And it's a pain in the ass to manage.
Yep. Now, one thing that I've asked for is the ability to have the hash sum of that inline script or inline style included in the CSP error, but it's not currently part of the spec. And if that were added, that's helpful not just for a laboratory, but for other things that are using it to find out like what scripts are being loaded and which specific version of which specific version of the script is it, and so on. So yeah, this is a laboratory. We can try it out on a slightly more complicated website if you want. So I know I said that addons.mozilla.org is blocked, which it is. It's just a Firefox built-in thing to protect people from add-ons injecting stuff and installing more add-ons, which would be bad. But you can trick the browser by going to addons.mozilla.org // All right.
You're giving all the secrets away.
I know. I'm giving all the secrets away. I mean, luckily with this, you can only hurt yourself. You can't hurt anybody else. So now you'll see that that laboratory is, able to run. Now, addons.mozilla.org was something that took us, oh golly, I think from the beginning to end, it took about 7 years to figure out a content security policy for it. That's how difficult it was. There's a lot to it. But you know what? I'm just going to tell people it took 7 years. And
sure.
Sure.
It took really like 2-3 months of active work, right? I remember when you started. Didn't you write a blog post about this on the Hacks blog or something?
We did, yeah. The bug itself was open for 7 years. I think it did take like 2 or 3 months of like real intensive work to make it work. And a lot of that was just trying to figure out what the heck should the policy be. Well, with Laboratory, you just click Record the Site. And we'll refresh the page. We'll click on some extensions. Now I'm not going to log in because this is just a fresh profile. I don't have my password manager or anything here. But we can go to Explore. And we can look at a theme here. And we can go to some views. So the idea is with Laboratory, you want to click around on every single possible style of page that you have. So like you want to click on your review pages. You want to click on your this one's here, like your dictionary packs page, because you don't know like what these major categories of pages are, where they're loading stuff from.
Yeah, and all the locales too, and all that stuff. Because like, particularly for AMO, like you're gonna end up having to click on like 50,000 pages. It's gonna be a lot of pages. Can you like spider it somehow, or could you?
You probably could. I mean, like,
Zap to spider it at the same time.
I think Zap can spider it. I think it can inject redirections into things, and anytime you can automate Firefox, you could just automate installing Laboratory and start the recording. So you could do that, but I just clicked around on a bunch of things, and I'm just going to click here. All right, so now you'll see it is warning you that it uses unsafe inline, unsafe eval, or data inside script source. These are like 3 different things you can do that are, they're not necessarily dangerous. They just limit what protections the CSP will give you. So if you look here, and we'll see, all right, well, so there's some unsafe inline script, which I don't remember there being on AMO, but apparently there it is. So this policy right here is very, very, very close, almost identical to what took people like 3 months to generate.
Yeah, I think it might be, we may have some nonsense on AMO. I don't think we have unsafe inline on the production policy.
Oh, that could be. But yeah, I mean, like you've got, this is pretty good. You'll see here that like the connect source is API v4, and it's a bunch of do the same thing. So you could just set connect source to, what's that? Oh, right. It thinks it's to addons.mozilla.org simply because we're on addons.mozilla.org . But like, it's like a little tricky. But you just set it to the boop. You'll see here like.
And do you, so that's an interesting aspect. So you generate the policy with Laboratory, and then you're going to store that policy somewhere. In your case, you put it in Nginx. And we always kind of go back and forth with the devs and the ops team on whether the policy should live like in the web server config or directly in the web application when you have one, right? Not when you're in a static page. What's your take on that? Like, where do you think the best place to manage it is?
I mean, I usually just put it. I actually don't think it matters that much at all. I tend to prefer it being on the web server simply because usually tweaks to these sorts of things on the web server don't require a, if you do it that way, then you don't necessarily have to redeploy the entire application. So like, a lot of people have like CDNs that are front-ending their website or whatever. If you do that, it's really easy just to have the injection happen there. That way, you can just change your configuration without having to, change any code that you want. But there definitely is an attraction to having, the policy for an application bundled right there in the code. So.
Yeah, I mean, potentially it makes it easier for the devs to manage the policy long term, right? If it's straight in the application, or even for them to test it locally.
For sure, yeah, I think
benefit too.
A lot of it just comes down to like, what is your development model? If your development model is like you kind of have like a DevOps model, then yeah, I think in that case it makes a lot of sense for it to live inside the application. That way the developers can change it there. They just redeploy the application and it's done. If you have more of a traditional model where the developers write some stuff and it goes and you have some system administrators who are installing stuff and like maintaining the web servers, like I think in that case it makes more sense to have it in the web server just because you touch fewer things usually to update it there. Or if you just have it in your CDN, then you just just change a line in your CDN configuration.
I've seen cases where it's better to put it in the web server because the web server will like proxy different resources to different endpoints. Like some of it will go, most of it will go to the application, but then you have like the statics that go over there and maybe some other endpoint that go here, and then you have to manage like 3 different CSPs. Whereas if you just put it in the web server, you generally only have one. So that's another thing.
It's really all about trade-offs. Like there's no for CSP in this case for deploying it, there's no I think perfect solution or anything.
Cool.
But yeah, this is a laboratory.
What else do you have?
What's that? What else do I have?
What else do you have? Yeah, is that it? That's pretty good.
Yeah, I'm really happy with how it turned out. You can even run it on, the observatory itself. So let's record this. Just refresh this page. We'll do a scan of itself. Boop. All right, gets an A+. And you can see like we've got the content security policy analysis, which is really good. If we go down, we can see like, okay, well here, this is this is the policy that it is sending. So if I were to go over here, so it's like the style source is just it's just the root of the servers, so I think that's pretty close to what we have, yep. So otherwise, origin, boop. And script source is the path, the full path. So you can see it like rolling all the way down to the specific version of Bootstrap, a specific version of Lodash. So that's just the default. We've got some different things that it connects to. These are all the various third-party services that it integrates with. And you'll go over here, we'll see that, well, here's connect source. This is pretty good. We can actually drill it down all the way to the path and like, oh my god. All right, let's do directory. Why is it too long?
Is there a length limit on the CSP policy, or is it just a limit of the laboratory?
No, it's so the limit is not actually this. Like this can be as long as it wants. And if I were to say everything, if I were to set everything to path, so as specific as possible, it's all in here. So if I copy it and I try to paste it, well, let's just paste it up here. You'll see that the whole thing is there. It's just that in this tooltip that hovers to give you a nice display of it, I can't make it any bigger than this box. Like it has to be contained inside this box. So thanks you for using Laboratory because you're awesome, but it can't show you the policy, even though it's like, it's there. It's just, it can't show it. But you can go down to origin, directory, origin.
Yeah, and you get back something a little more reasonable.
Yep. So.
Where's the source? You need to show that too. Where's the, if people want to, I don't know, contribute to the extension itself, can they?
Yeah, absolutely. So Laboratory is completely open source. Anybody can play around with it. Anybody can use it. Anybody can write code for it. If you go to, oh, come on, really? There we go. Boop. We go back to the add-on. You can see that it is right here. Moves over on GitHub. And it's really, really easy to develop. You simply, I'm going to make this a little bit bigger here. All right. So you simply fork it, clone it, like you do with any project. And then all you do to develop it is you just have two windows open. So you have one that's like you just run npm run script watch. And what this does is it just keeps monitoring your code, and if anything changes, it will rebuild a brand new extension for you. And then in the other window, you run what's called WebEXT, which is a tool developed by Mozilla, which simply it acts as a bridge between an extension that's being changed locally and the browser itself. So what it lets you do is that anytime that add-on changes, it reloads it into Firefox for you automatically. So you don't have to like go into tools and then add-ons and then load it, and like that's kind of a pain. What WebEXT will do is you make a change to your code, npm recompiles it, then WebEXT reloads the extension back into your browser. So I hope you all just really enjoyed this presentation that talks about laboratory. I can never figure out how to say it. Laboratory. I don't know. One of those is right. And I don't know what it is. I really try to solve a serious problem that people have, namely that CSP is just too difficult to do. Like, it's just too difficult for normal human beings to do. It's too difficult to do the back and forth thing with web servers, which requires you to have both a developer knowledge and web security knowledge and like web server maintenance knowledge. Like, that's super hard. Using proxies like burp or zap is like also very hard. The like super steep learning curve. All those things are just very difficult. And with Laboratory, I wanted to take something that was previously a month of work for a lot of people and turn it into a few minutes of work. You can see when I did it on my blog that it took just a few clicks and it generated a perfect policy that exactly matches what my website is doing. It'll still obviously be more difficult for most websites because it'll probably say things like you're using unsafe inline code, and it'll tell you about that. It'll warn you, but like you'll have to remove it and then like click around with Laboratory again, start from scratch to make sure you've removed all of it. But really, it's designed to take like a whole lot of work and make it just a really simple, easy thing to do, or very least like get you 99% of the way there and let you tweak the rest, which you could do manually inside the tool itself.
And I want to add, I think it's really important that people do. All the data that we have keeps indicating that cross-site scripting attacks and injections on website continue to be issues that, every single, even new website, not just the ones that we coded 10 years ago, but like recent ones still have a bunch of XSS on them. And we're most of the time lucky that they're never exploited for anything like really, really bad. We know they could be. But I mean, I know like you mentioned, obviously, addons.mozilla.org. Like we enabled CSP on it because we kept having XSS reports like every other week, and since we have the CSP, like we basically never get any of them, and so we completely eradicated that entire family of attacks on the website. And it's not just AMO; like a lot of applications can benefit from this. So yeah, people should absolutely have a CSP on their website if they care about its security.
For sure. I mean, addons.mozilla.org, Google has problems. Everybody really has problems with cross-site scripting attacks. And like, if Mozilla and Google can't make it work, and these are companies that build web browsers and are like kind of foundational to the web, if we can't make our code work such that there's not cross-site scripting attacks in it, then I don't think anybody can do it. It's just too, like, you could follow best practices, but everybody makes mistakes. It's really, really hard not to make mistakes. And, you know, if not necessarily your own mistakes, mistakes in a library that you use, you know, those make mistakes too. If you have CSP, you can just more or less just kill an entire class of attack, or at least, you know, the attack is still there, but it can't do any damage at all. And I know that when we did it on addons.mozilla.org, I think, you know, we have a bug bounty program where we paid out on these bugs, and I think we dropped like $50,000 or $80,000 a year from our bug bounty payouts just by doing this.
It was $50K. Yeah, I pulled the numbers back then, and I think it was $50K.
$50K?
So
yeah, that's like serious money. I mean, like that's
yeah.
real money. And it's not just money, but it's also like the security of our users.
Right,
you know,
and it's the time we used to spend like fixing these issues as they came along, right? We used to play whack-a-mole with XSS all over these sites, and we no longer do.
Yeah, I mean, I think we still try to fix them. Like if you know, an XSS attack that's blocked by CSP, we still pay out like at a lower rate on those. But it's no longer a fire drill, right? If somebody comes up with an XSS attack and they're like, well, I have found this attack, but it's all completely blocked by CSP. We're like, okay, thank you. We'll fix it because, you know, we want to have these bugs fixed. But it's not a, you know, get up at 2 a.m. and fix the security issue before it's turned into an attack. Like, it's a big deal on addons.mozilla.org because, you know, if you have code that's just arbitrarily executing there, it can install stuff.
You can install add-ons,
yeah, it can do a lot of really dangerous stuff. So
it can. To be fair, though, the CSP, and we do know that there are a lot of discussions on it in the security community. Like, it's not a silver bullet, right? There are many, many ways to bypass it. They don't always apply, but like it's kind of like the whack-a-mole game that security researchers always had against firewalls or other security methods. Like, we make progress on the CSP, and someone figures out a way to bypass it with using like an SVG injection or some other method. So it's not because you have a CSP that you need to stop doing security for your website, right? You still need to care about it. It's just going to cover 95% of the attack vectors that, you know, you don't have to worry about anymore.
Yep, and one thing I'd like to just add while you brought that up is that the CSP policy that Laboratory generates, let's see if this policy is very, very safe. Actually, this one is not. Let me refresh it here. I made it less safe so you could see it easier. But, oops, okay, record the site. Let's just refresh. All right. This particular policy is very, very safe. It doesn't allow any unsafe inline script. It doesn't allow any eval calls in JavaScript. It doesn't allow any scripts loaded from data links or anything like that. And just as importantly, the default that it does for script source is down to the exact file. One of the biggest problems that people have with CSP attacks is that, you know, a lot of websites load a lot of different scripts, right? And you know, maybe they all use that exact same CDN, right? And they think to themselves, well, I don't want to try to have it's too much work for me to like list out manually every single script that we use, right? It might be, you know, the Cloudflare CDN hosts hundreds of thousands of libraries that people use. And maybe your website uses 50 of them. And you're thinking to yourself, I don't want to figure out what all 50 of them and paste them into a CSP. So what happens is people just do things like they go to script and they just say, well, let's just have it be the whole server. Look how clean that is. Look how short that is. But what happens here is that anytime you have any vulnerable JavaScript on any of these CDNs, and they all do, I believe, you open yourself back up to, you know, cross-site scripting attacks. Whereas Laboratory is configured with like very safe defaults. By doing this, it's down to the exact version of the exact library that you wanted to load. So if there is a vulnerable library on the Cloudflare CDN somewhere, and there are thousands of them, this policy is not vulnerable to that.
Well,
this is a real problem. So
yeah, and in this case, you have versioned URLs that go to specific versions of the scripts themselves. But I've seen a lot of people like just import the latest URL of a JavaScript library that will change over time, and that means they will trust that library forever, like maybe 3 or 4 years from now, when somebody completely new manages it, they will still be trusting that library. So like maybe in addition to CSP, you may want to, well, one, pin your libraries, make sure you use the version URL, and two, maybe use something like SRI to just load the hash of that library version into your HTML so that it cannot be changed by the upstream. And all of that with CSP puts you in a pretty good spot.
Yep, absolutely. Sub-resource integrity and CSP, and just like, just generally doing the patching stuff that you would expect. Like people think to themselves, oh, I have a web server. Well, I got to install the operating system patches, right? I got to do, however it does it, apt-get update, apt-get upgrade, whatever. I got to keep on top of that. Every time there's a security patch, I do it. But people use these libraries on their websites, and they're just like, well, it works now. I'm never going to update it. But libraries are just the same. You want to make sure that, you keep your libraries updated to use, modern versions of jQuery. Like, they release patches that have just bug fixes. They don't change how it works, but fix bugs and security bugs. So you got to keep on top of that as well.
Words of wisdom by April King, ladies and gentlemen. All right, thanks, April.
You're very welcome. Talk to you later, Julian.
That was awesome. All right, cheers.
Goodbye.
All right, that is it for this episode with April. I hope you enjoyed it. Next up, I will be doing one solo to talk about SOPs and secrets and credentials management in cloud infrastructure. So that one should come up in a couple of weeks. And in the meantime, if you're interested in these topics, don't hesitate to reach out on Twitter, or pick up a copy of the book, and that's always helpful. Thank you very much for watching, and see you next time.